myself. My name is James Jackson. I work with Councilwoman Ayanna Presley's office. Just a little background. Councilwoman Presley is a city council at large. So she doesn't just represent, Dorchester or Mattapan or Roxbury. She represents the entire city, encompassing all of Boston. And I specifically am her community relations person as well as education policy advisor. So we just wanted to stop by here tonight, express, great gratitude obviously for the work that the SpedPac does. I mean, I'm personally a big advocate. I followed your work for a while. A little background behind me: education policy as well as children with special needs. And this goes back to home and family. I've got a cousin, Garrett, who has autism, and through that, his mother was able to develop the Garrett Presley Autism Resource Center. And I grew up, with the sentiments of that resource center. My first job was a lifeguard, and it was teaching children with special needs and autism how to swim and life skills and things of that nature. So very, very proud and obviously supportive of the work that you all do. And I just wanted to take this time to also thank you for what you guys do. If it weren't for the vocal advocates of parents and community organizers and leaders like yourselves, the councilwoman and other organizations wouldn't know from the ground and grassroots up what's really going on. So I just wanted to thank you for that, and thank you for having me here. Obviously, I didn't want to, impede on the meeting, but I just wanted to let you all know up front, as well as being passed around, our hearing meeting notes that are going to be put forth by the councilor on the city council to get your impression and to get your voice heard on the city council in regards to transitional services for students with special needs in BPS. More recently, we've been involved in a hearing with the Boston City Council as well as other stakeholding leaders in the community to develop and better, affect these resources that students with BPS have. So we invite you all to definitely come out and express your concern, express your experiences. After all, the city council won't effectively know until you voice your concern or voice your issue, and given that, the councilwoman as well as the other city council leaders have definitely, a better perspective and a better way to bring it back to the city council, bring it back to the leaders at BPS, to work together and develop a better solution for our students. And every student in BPS has the right, to a great educational opportunity. So once again, thank you so much for having me. My name is James Jackson. I'm the community relations person with Councilwoman Presley's office, and I'd be more than happy to leave cards. Unfortunately, I'm one of the newest members of her staff, so I don't have personalized business cards as of yet, although I do have the councilwoman's card, so feel free to reach out. Our office line is a general line, so our secretary will more than likely pass you through to hear your concerns, hear your issues, and thank you so much for having me. So thank you.
Thank you.
If anyone has any, thank you so much. Does anyone have any questions in regards to what's going on? Oh yeah, of course. I can definitely grab some and pass them out so that everyone has access.
Thank you very much for coming. We appreciate the City Council's support on all things related to BPS and particularly special education. My name is Carolyn Kane. For those of you who know me, I'm welcome back, and for those of you who are coming for the first time, welcome. I'm the chair of Boston SpedPac, which means that we are the parent group. We're all volunteers. We all have children in Boston Public Schools who have special needs, and we represent you with the administration before the school committee and working on and improving special education. We work with Deputy Superintendent Eileen Nash, who's here, and a number of her team. We have a packed agenda tonight about transition services, and since I do a lot of speaking generally, I'm going to let Diane Lashinskas, who's the secretary of the board, introduce some of our speakers tonight, but we have a number of SpedPac board members also here. John Santamon's our vice chair. He's working on the technical issues in the meeting, but could everybody who's on the board just raise their hand? I know I saw a couple of other people in the back too, so you can always approach any of us on any particular issues, and there's BPS staff here this evening if you have any individual issues related to your child's IEP, your child's educational program, even any issues related to transportation. Hopefully, now that we're in November, those have been resolved. but everybody's here to try to work together and give you information. So tonight's workshop is about transition services. Transition services are services for children who have special education, who are eligible for special education, who are ages 14 to 22 in the Boston Public Schools. So as you listen to the speakers tonight, you want to ask yourself, does my child have a transition plan? Or does my child need to get a transition plan? Has my child been assessed in the area of transition? Those are the things that you want to look at specifically. If your child's 13 and will be turning 14 years old within this IEP period, they also need to have a transition plan. That's the starting point. It's when the child turns 14, is on an IEP, that's when transition really becomes the focus. And special education services are to prepare our children for future education, future employment, and also independent living. So it really depends on the individual needs of the child and what it is that that child's going to need on the go forward to prepare them for those things. So transition goes beyond just academics. It can include what you'll hear tonight is about travel training, job coaching, filling out a job application, how to do a job interview, all of those things. And for more severely impacted children like my own, it involves more daily living skills so that they can gain more independence in their life. So as they become adults, they can have as much independence as possible. We all know that we're not going to be around forever, and preparing our children best through special education, since special education does end either when you graduate and get a diploma or when you're 22 years of age. You move on to adult services if your child continues to need services, and those are not a right, those are a benefit. So it means that we're all subject to funding annually by the state, and whether or not those services will be there is really dependent on funding. So you want to maximize the opportunities for your child while they're in special education, and really focus on these last years to ensuring that they're getting as much preparation for adulthood as possible. So we do have a packed agenda, so that's just a brief introduction. I'm going to let Diane Lashinskas introduce our first speaker, and we'll go from there. Thank you.
Hi everyone. I just also want to add, so whether your child is going to graduate after 4 years of high school or go on to age 22 in the Boston Public Schools, these are definitely services, no matter which stage they're in, that will really help them navigate into adulthood. All right, so moving on, first speakers are from Boston Public Schools. We have Paula Donnelly, Doris Van Gorder, and Jack McCauley, who are going to present what Boston is doing currently and plans to move ahead with transition. I also have some cards here. If anyone has any questions that they would like to ask us, if you can write it down on this card and give it to us. If we can't answer them tonight, we will definitely answer them later on and put them up on our website. So, welcome.
Hello and welcome everyone. Thank you so much for coming out tonight to support your child's education. We really are excited about working with your children and supporting them around transition, and really value you as a partner in the process. Good. So as Carol said, transition is a collaborative and ongoing effort and process that prepares students to move from the world of school to the world of adulthood. As adults, our transition looks very different for our students. Some students graduate from high school and go on to college. Some move from high school, go into vocational training. Some are employed competitively, some are supported, engaged in supportive work, some engage in continuing education at local colleges. Some are living independently, others are supported, living in supportive living arrangements, and some are living at home. And they participate in the community at all different levels. So So what we want to do in Boston is support students to have a great transition so that they do great in adult life. So when in school, students participate in transition activities that are based on their needs, and we really take into consideration their strengths, their preferences, their interests, and their vision for adult life. So in Boston Public Schools, our goal is to provide quality transition that supports our students to develop skills they need to live independently. And as I said before, we value you as partners in the process. So we really see your child as the center of transition planning, the process, and we support and encourage them to take an active role, in the process. And one way they can take an active role is to participate in their IEP meeting. And as Carol said, at age 14, we hope to see students sitting in and planning at their IEP meeting. I recently was able to observe IEP meeting over at Madison Park High School where the student presented using a PowerPoint, and he had some communication challenges and was a little bit nervous about presenting, but he presented in a PowerPoint, and within the PowerPoint there were embedded videos of him actually engaged in work that he does in the community and work in the schools. It was to music, and it was really, he was in the entire planning process in terms of creating the PowerPoint and then presented it at the IEP meeting. So it was wonderful and inspiring to see it. We also want students to be involved in the development of their vision statement that they're going to share at the IEP meeting. So we really look at person-centered planning, and this student used a 5-bold step process where he really looked at his strengths, his interests, and then looked at the barriers that might be in the way from preventing him from reaching his goal, and created an action plan to begin to move towards reaching his goal. In terms of identifying career options that match their interests and skills, we're working really closely with students and customizing transition assessment for them. There is no one-size-fits-all as a transition assessment. You really want to look at the student and customize it so that you really can get a really good look at the student's interests and help him find his preferences, his skills, so that they can look at the career options available to them and really create a vision. We really would like them to be involved in deciding what courses they want to take at school. So where they might want to work, maybe they're interested in the library. They might want to take work in the library at the school, or they might want to work at the library in the community. So we really want them involved in the planning of their schedule and their vision. So we're really excited. I've been working in Boston Public Schools for over 35 years, and I've always been involved, although I didn't really know that it was called transition, but I've always been involved in situations where preparing students for life after high school. And to see the collaboration and the amount of professional development that's being done across the district is so exciting for me, and I know it's exciting for all teachers across the district. So building capacity to provide quality transition services for all students across the district is a priority. Our goal is to eliminate any opportunity gaps in delivering the services, and by doing that, we're going to eliminate the achievement gaps for our students. Some of the things that we're doing in Boston is we have monthly coordinator meetings, and at those meetings, there's representatives from every school across the high schools and middle schools and elementary schools, and we share best practices, we share resources, we get together and we talk about and collaborate around improving transition across the district, amongst other things. Transition is embedded in everything we do, so it's every meeting we touch on transition. We have weekly program director meetings where transition is embedded in the work we do. We have bi-monthly liaison meetings. So liaisons at special ed from all levels, from elementary all the way to high school, talk about and share best practices around transition. Just recently, we had 31 Boston Public School staff members attend the Transition Matters Conference, which was an amazing conference. We had guest speakers from across the country and so many workshops that our staff were able to attend and bring the information back to our schools. We recently started a partnership between the guidance department and special ed, and we had a wonderful conference where over 130 Boston Public Schools staff members came, and we spent the morning talking about transition and what it looks like for all students. And we began to share ideas how we could support each other around transition. We had about 100 staff members participate in a travel training professional development. I think it was a year and a half ago. We had related services, which is occupational therapy, speech, vision, mobility, adaptive phys ed, get together and create a multidisciplinary transition work group, and they engage in monthly meetings to examine best practices and share ideas. And they're here tonight, and they're going to share some of the wonderful work they're doing. We have school-based, customized transition professional development because it looks different at different schools. So we want to make sure that we get into each school and we support schools as needed. We have a lot of collaboration with community agencies and parent groups. We really love the work we do with parents and groups in the community. We have a great new resource. It's a web-based resource called Schoology, and we have amazing transition resources uploaded to the site, and we also have an area on the site where we can collaborate across the district. If we can't meet face to face, we can, post a question up on Schoology and ask for resources. There is a program at UMass Boston. It's called the Transition Leadership Program, and it's federally funded. We have had 4 Boston Public Schools staff members complete the course and be endorsed as transition specialists. And we have 6 BPS staff enrolled this September, and I happen to be enrolled in the program, and it's phenomenal. So our goal is to get as many teachers endorsed so that we can train across the district. Transition this year, we have a lot of collaboration going on with community agencies to extend or develop employment opportunities for students. I was at Charlestown High School last year, and we connected with the Chamber of Commerce, and we were able to really work to begin developing jobs in the community. And every year we meet new people, and we just kind of look for the resources in the community and connect. We had a mentoring day at City Hall where students were provided job shadowing opportunities. What we have coming up is a high school passport to our future conference, which is going to be at UMass Boston. And the students, there's going to be lots of resources around transitioning careers that the students can navigate. We have Youth Leadership Network partnership with Easter Seal. We have an intramural sports program starting at the high school, and we're partnering with the zones at the high schools. So students are going to go travel train to different schools, travel on the T, to go play against different schools at the high school level. We're starting at the high school level. We have the ICE program at UMass, Bunker Hill, and Roxbury College. And this year we have a new program, Project Search. 8 students from Charlestown High School are doing an internship at Spalding Rehab in Charlestown. Students are travel trained to the program, and the hope is that they'll be placed in competitive employment at the end of their internships. So then we have the Boston Public Schools Strategic Plan for Transition. And all the high schools are assessing their progress towards meeting the goals in the plan. They've collected data to inform the programming at the district level and at their schools. And as a result of the data they're collecting, we're going to develop a district-wide transition resource map. And just recently, Strive has joined special education and is in the process of doing a self-assessment to align the program with the district's strategic plan for transition. So I have Jack McCauley here tonight to talk a little bit about Strive, and I want to thank you again for coming out.
Are we going to have time for Q&A?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
Thanks, Doris. Thanks very much. It's really a pleasure to be here tonight. My name is Jack McCauley, and I'm a special educator with the Boston Public Schools. I've worked for the Strive program for the past 6 years, and I just completed the Transition Leadership program at UMass. So, as a special educator who works for the Strive program, I'm not assigned to a single classroom anymore. I have 4 different high schools, and I'm working with students from all across the city. That flexibility gives me the autonomy to work with students from the moment they leave their home in the morning, to meet them at their doorstep, to travel train them to a new work experience, to travel train them to one of the college campuses where they may be participating in the inclusive concurrent enrollment program, where our non-diploma bound students are eligible to take a college class, something of their interest, and be with their age peers. So STRIVE is an acronym. Each letter stands for something else. So supporting transition to reach independence through vocational experiences. Historically, the 6 of us in the STRIVE program have worked with high schools. We're working with students 18 to 22-year-olds, the 18 to 22-year-old population. These students mostly have significant or intellectual disabilities. Their IEP teams have determined that they are more than likely not going to earn a high school diploma. They have not successfully completed or passed the MCAS after multiple attempts. So we know this population, these individuals will more than likely be with us until 22. So during those 4 years, we're continuing their transition to help align the next step with the adult support agency. Once specialized education is finished, we're going to work with them and their families and the community agencies to make sure there's a smooth transition. So the last day of high school, the last day they're 22, the next day they're going to start in an adult program, and that may be through the adult agency like DDS or MRC. So historically, there's been 5 stages of STRIVE where we provide a variety of support services to students. Not every single student participates in every single one. Again, it's individualized. So some of our students are already well travel trained and can easily get from one place around the city much better than I can. But when I first meet a student, when they're late, and when they're 17, approaching 18, I ask and make sure that I'm invited to their IEP meeting, and I would participate in their ITP, so their individual transition plan. but I would meet with the individual, I'd meet with their family and try to get to know them a little bit better, and then we would sort of craft and build a goal and a vision. It's surprising to me, and maybe you guys can go back home or speak to your sons and daughters about when they're asked, what is your vision? Many students have no idea what to say. So we want to begin that conversation a little bit earlier, maybe even before 14. If a student can communicate to me or to anyone, what are the things they like, what are the things they dislike, what are their areas of strength, and what are some things that they want to develop and build and strengthen, that's an IEP. If I know those 4 things about your son or daughter, I can develop an IEP with them. So we want our students, your children, to be able to have that kind of a conversation. I'm really good at this. This is where I want to strengthen. These are things I like, and these are things I don't like. That helps inform us of the direction so that we can thread that into their IEP, and that's a part of their vision. Where do you want to go? We want our students to have an idea of what they're good at, and what they're passionate about, and like for all of us, that's what we want to do and how we want to spend our time. The mission of STRIVE is to support students by exploring and providing inclusive pre-vocational, vocational, and transitional services. So pre-vocational stuff for me began at home way before I turned 14 and got my working papers. It was about babysitting brothers and sisters. It was about chores in the house. It was about shoveling the sidewalk and raking the leaves and doing those things that, what's your role in the family? How do you participate in the family? What's your role in the neighborhood? How do you participate in the neighborhood? Are you a member of the Boy Scouts? Or are you a member of a sports team? What's your role in that? And where's your place in community? How are you engaged? And then in the classroom settings, we want to find something that, what's your responsibility in the classroom? What's your responsibility in the school? And then what's your responsibility in the greater school community? And from that, that's how we sort of build up an inventory of what a student likes and dislikes, where their strengths are. And then once they turn 16, and again, we partner with the Mayor's Office and Boston Youth Fund to help these students get their first jobs. And then we'll provide support to those students during that process. So what do we do in STRIVE? As special educators, we really see ourselves as serving as a liaison between the student, the family, and the community. We have about 38 different community partnerships and agencies. It's not just recycling. We're working across the city in 38 different places. And that includes everything from Impactability, which is here tonight and will present soon, Mass Rehab, Social Security, the MBTA, UMass Boston, Bunker Hill Community College, Roxbury Community College, Morgan Memorial, Goodwill Industries, Wentworth Institute. This past September, we celebrated our 25-year anniversary of a partnership with Wentworth, where 25 years ago we had 2 students with disabilities employed on the campus. Now, during the course of a year, we have about 120 students that work on the campus. And now we have 3 full-time Boston Public School staff on the campus. And for many of the students, it's their first opportunity to really learn how to be a good employee and what that entails. We assist students and their families through the whole transition process. What is success for me is not only a student who graduates and walks out the door, but has had a successful transition onto something else. If the student is sitting home after they leave the Boston Public Schools, not engaged and not doing something, as a teacher, I feel like I failed them. We facilitate vocational and transitional services for classrooms and individuals in the schools that we're assigned to. So I have Madison Park, Horace Mann School for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing, Boston Green Academy, and Brighton High School. During the academic year, we have work training sites at Wentworth. DISC is Digital Imaging Service Center, where we found a need. We're taking paper documents and scanning them into a digital format, and there's several stages of that job, and those are transferable skills, not only just showing up and being punctual and wearing a uniform and having good hygiene and good relationships with your coworkers. It's about finding something that you can put on a resume and take and carry with you once you exit Boston Public Schools. We have students working in the central kitchen, at the Tobin Center, the Animal Rescue League. We've had students last year for the first time not only taking college courses, but actually engaging in employment on the campus of UMass Boston and Roxbury Community College. During the summertime, we have a greater flexibility to provide a variety of work experience opportunities for students to trial. And really at the end of that, we want them to find out, was this something I liked? Is this something I want to continue to pursue? Or is this something I know I definitely don't want to do anymore? Think about the first job you ever had as a teenager. Is that something you want to go back and do for the rest of your life? So oftentimes these first experiences for students are to discover, is this something I want to do or pursue? I think we're celebrating our 7th year with the Inclusive Concurrent Enrollment Program. We have 30 Boston Public School students who are non-diploma bound, students who present with significant areas of disability, who are taking college classes at UMass Boston, Roxbury Community College, and UMass Boston. So I think that's really something great and something we really celebrate. And very proud of that partnership. So Doris had alluded to how we're building capacity. The role of us community connection facilitators in Strive, even though I just think of myself as a special educator, is changing and evolving to meet the needs of the students and their families and the population. So we've moved out from under career and technical education, where our focus really was on vocational experiences and employment, to now back under special education, which sort of really makes sense as we strive to build capacity not only in the schools, the community, but in the greater Boston area. So now we're meeting weekly over at Campbell Resources with our SPED colleagues to develop what's the next step for transition. How do we share how do we bring what we can, how do we share our knowledge and best practices with the special education programs in the schools? We are going to provide specialized transition support to teachers based on the individual needs of the classroom and the individual needs of the student. And we want to plan and collaborate with school staff, inform curriculum. So if I'm working with a student or a group of students and we're going out to apply for a job, and the student is doing an online application and they're struggling with that, I could then go back to the classroom and say, you know, the student didn't know his mom's maiden name. The student didn't have his social security number handy. This student was asked the question, do you have a disability? And we haven't talked about self-disclosure yet. The student thinks of themselves as a SPED student because that's what the culture calls him or refers to him, but they haven't developed an appreciation of what their disability area is and how that may impact their ability to access and participate in employment. It also begs the question, do you need accommodations, not only in the classroom, but do you need accommodations in the work environment? We want our students to be able to self-advocate and speak up and decide for themselves, do they want to disclose that, but also say, yes, I need instructions in large print. Yes, I need instructions in Braille, and so forth. So I think some of the knowledge that we've learned with the population that we're working with, we can bring back to the schools and share with our colleagues. Not everyone knows what they want to do, so we need to start doing discovery and exploration much earlier with our 14-year-olds and up, so that we're exposing them to the variety of different career paths they can choose. I think it's essential that a student be able to, not a team of adults, but the student be able to communicate their likes, their dislikes, their areas of interest, their preferences, their strengths. That's the foundation for a good IEP. We want a student to be able to communicate what kind of learner you are. You don't necessarily have to say this is my disability, but I know I'm a visual learner. I know I'm a kinesthetic. I need to touch something and practice it to be able to do it well. And it's important for a student to be able to know what accommodations they need in order to access and participate, not only in their education, but in their work environment. We know that travel training is essential. We know that our students who can travel the city safely, mostly through our friends over at Impact, are much more likely to meet success in employment settings because more options are available to them. So we need to start getting out and practicing. How many of us are taking our kids grocery shopping? How many of us are going to CVS and buying the daily products that we need? And, you know, practice safety skills. Where's the safest place to sit on the bus? Where's the safest place to stand on a platform? What do you do if you miss your stop? We need to have our students access the community. Not all of our education is taking place in rows and seats behind desks. We need to be out in the community. I want to introduce my colleagues from Related Services, Jane Colley, an OT, and Ann Kinney from Speech and Language, and Monique Whitman from OT.
We're kind of new at this, so you probably have to give us a little slack in the beginning. As Jack said, I'm Jane Crawley. I'm an occupational therapist, and I work in the Related Services Department. Ann and Monique are also Related Services professionals. Related Services are OTs, PTs, speech therapists, speech and language pathologists, vision teachers, orientation and mobility instructors. Who did I miss? Adaptive phys ed. And we work in a number of settings. I myself work at Charlestown High. I work at Madison Park. I'm at the Frederick Pilot Middle School. I'm in a number of different schools, and most of us work in more than one. Some of us work in just one school. I work in only high school and middle school, and so I've always worked, my career here, I've always worked with older students who are getting ready for transition. And the more time I think we spend in middle school and high school and start to think about making our folks successful adults, the more we realize that high school, 18 to 22, is too late. Like Jack said, it's really time in middle school, really 13, 14 years old, to get people more ready to be more independent in everything, in what they do at home, what they do in the community, and really what they do at school. So given all of that information, those of us in Related Services, and I'm neglectful in mentioning, Thelma Pierce is in the back, and Thelma's our director of Related Services. And Thelma and Aixa have been extremely supportive of us, sort of pooling our resources, thinking through what we need to do as part of our practice in middle and high school, and also as part of our sort of general understanding about our own specialties and how our specialties can play into people being more independent, making our students more successful adults. And I think that's sort of what Jack was talking about, and backing it up so that we're working with 6th graders up. This year is the first year that we've done a pilot program to enhance individual life skills. And Monique is going to talk a little bit about that.
So I'm Monique Redmond. I'm an occupational therapist, and Jane and I and Ann and a couple of other therapists had been thinking that it would be great. We had talked to Jack and a couple of high school professionals if we had started some of this transition planning earlier. If the kids had a little more experience earlier, if we had some of those life skills more firmly, just to know what kids need to work on, what they don't need to work on. So we developed a pilot program. It's right now just at the Umana and at the Frederick, and it's just with 6th, 7th, 8th graders in the moderately to low cognition groups, the self-contained classrooms, but we hope to expand it. But basically it works on skills such as hand washing and teeth brushing and putting a Band-Aid on, how to use a knife, things like this, kitchen skills, and starts to explore some of those pre-vocational skills to see where the kids' skills lie and where their interests lie. Sweeping floors, doing kitchen skills, doing all kinds of things within the building, and seeing if we can pull in different professionals to teach them these different skills, walking a little in the community. So we're trying to work that into something that's just a once-a-week class. We also take that curriculum a lot of the times and give it to the teachers ahead of time so they can work on some of the vocabulary. They reinforce a lot of those skills throughout the week. So we've really found it's very successful. So it's something we've just started this year, and we do hope to expand it, so it'll maybe be a 2-year program that might work into other middle schools, so that the kids can go into the high school with a list of things they've tried, a list of things they have to work on. So
to work on those types of skills. And Anne has also done a lot of work with the self-determination, which we've also worked on for 8th graders. So,
We have focused, I'm sorry, I'm Ann Kinney, one of the many speech-language pathologists, and I have the privilege of being full-time at the Frederick. So I get focused on self-determination primarily with the students that are going to be 14 this year, so that they're ready for their IEP meeting. And we talked about strengths, interest, areas we want, or skills we wanted to build on. We found that you need to be specific. When we said, what about math? People said generally, I'm good at math or I'm bad at math. When we broke them down, it was quickly, and the kids they really made me very proud. Many of them, hands flashed up, those multiplication tables. I need to work on the multiplication tables. So once we break a skill down, they were probably more reflective, introspective than many adults I work with. But, so we've got our skill we want to work on. And then the next step is, how do you make it a realistic goal? And how do you reach that goal? You know, you can't sit and wait for the multiplication tables to pop in your mind overnight. So we've set up charts. The kids contributed. I found some websites. They knew some websites. They knew some games. We bought some card games. So then I'm just bringing home tonight the data to see what how much time the average student spent on this. We did it for a 2-week trial period, and they're measuring how many minutes, what they did. A website, a card game, whatever. And parents initialed it. And then that involved planning. It involved researching resources. You know, you can't ask mom every night to sit and spend a half an hour playing a card game with you. But you can have someone else help you get on the internet if you need. You can learn to operate your own software. And the other thing is being realistic. They thrilled me. They always thrill me that they know what they need and what's realistic, what they think they can do. Things that are overwhelming to them, they'll tell me, that's too much. So the third thing now, and we're just really getting into this one, and it's been very interesting, is discussing an IEP. We start with as a speech pathologist, you always got to answer your WH questions. So what is an IEP? And what is an IEP meeting? Where are they held? Who comes to them? Why do we have them? And how often? How come I only get tested every 3 years? They had wonderful questions about the whole IEP process. And if I look back, my very first IEP meeting, it was intimidating for me. Can't imagine being 13 or 14 and walking into a room with a whole room full of adults, and they're going to talk about me. Well, this whole process of self-determination and reaching a goal, our goal is to empower them so that they can go in there with some confidence and be able to explain and express themselves, their wants, their interests, their needs, with some confidence, and do it effectively and efficiently. And so far, we've got some kids pretty excited. They're looking forward to that first IEP. So I think it's going to be a good program, and we are expanding on it, but it's been a real learning process for all of us. And like I said, the kids never disappoint us. They always come through, and we're going to keep going on it.
We're actually tomorrow we're doing a video of a mock IEP where the SES coordinator for the Frederick is going to be there and run an IEP, and the students will all play different roles in the IEP. And so we're hoping that will be sort of, the more you play it out, the more you get a sense as to the comfort level that you have with it. And so we're hoping that's a good kind of starting off point. The other thing too is that Ann mentioned we're keeping data. It's kind of in our psyche to keep data on all of the things that happen. I know Monique has been rabid about getting data, pre-test, post-test. Every skill that we're working on, there's pre-test and post-test information. So we'll be able to tell the person what kind of success, the student what kind of success, and at their IEP they can share some of that information on what kind of success they've had in their life skills and what kinds of skills they've gained over the past year or 2 years. Some kids 3 years, because they'll be with us 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. The other piece of it is that in line with what Jack was talking about in the district initiative for professional development, we're presenting to our colleagues in related services this year, many of whom we hope will pick up some of these curricula some of the curricula that we're using and developing and sort of tweaking now, and start to play it out in other schools. And I guess the final piece, and I just want to talk real quickly about this, because our sort of two goals and what we're working on this year are to expand what we have, and secondly, to sort of bring our expertise into the work sites, and a lot of your sons and daughters are going to be getting, if they haven't already, different work site exposure through the program that Jack talked about. And we're going to do on-site consultation for those programs. If a person, say, an example, if a person has some sort of a physical disability and they may need some adaptation or ergonomic adaptation to the environment, PTs and OTs, we have a team of people that will go out to the work site and help maybe make those adaptations. And that's kind of our goal for this year, is to get that up and running and have people know who we are, people in the district know who we are, and how they can get in touch with us.
Thank you.
And that's it. Thank you. Thanks for having us.
I know that was a lot of information. Some folks have a few questions. We only have a couple of minutes for questions, and then we have to move on. So I didn't know if Doris wanted to come back. If anyone did have a specific question right now, otherwise you can also write it on the cards we handed out as well.
My son's actually just going to be going back into BPS in 16, so I'm wondering how soon after that we could expect Fran to have the transition assessment done.
Now, because usually the assessments start at age 14.
Yeah, it's ongoing, so it will be starting. We can talk more about that.
Ms. Reporter?
Yes.
I'm not sure if this question is for you or for Jack. What other training programs vocational schools do they have besides that for the older students who are seeking a trade?
Vocational programs?
Well, I think each high school has partners within the community around that high school that they've developed and established over the years. So my high school days go back, or when I was in the classroom back at Charlestown High, we had partnerships with the local businesses in that community. So depending on the age of the kids, they'd be working on pre-vocational skills in the classroom, and then in the school, and then in the school community before they'd actually be able to go out to get a job. Through the City of Boston, the Boston Mayor's Youth Fund, students can apply for summer jobs, but through the Strive, when they're older, we have a partnership with them where we support the older students.
When you say older, what age?
18 to 22. So the BYF jobs are usually for any student who lives in the city of Boston and can apply for a summer job through the mayor's hotline, and it's 14 to 17-year-olds.
Can an employer ask if you have a disability?
They can ask, and you can choose not to answer. That's called you can choose to self-disclose or not. It's really up to the individual. But for some individuals who present with an area of disability, they're going to want certain supports and accommodations to help them be able to do their job well. They can wait till after they get the job. So we try to teach the students, when is it appropriate to share that information, or do you not want to share that information at all? What we have found is that many of the students, they don't know they have a disability.
Jack, what other types of jobs do you offer other than, I have a very high functioning 19-year-old son, and I feel like the system has failed my child. My child should be the poster child for failure through BPS. So I want to know what other type of jobs you offer him other than scanning or recycling.
Can I just maybe ask if maybe you could meet with one of us where it's
Sure.
specific and we could help you that way?
Okay.
And I just want to say, our job is really to get vocational experiences. It's not really our job to get students employed, although that is often one of the outcomes. And we try to partner with the city to make sure as many of our students who do present with a disability have an equal access to those summer jobs.
Can I also say too, for my daughter's just turned 18 yesterday, and she has a more significant disability. So within her school, there are many jobs. So if you look at your child's individual school, you know, there's photocopying, answering phones, there's a kitchen, there's support in the classroom. So I had gone to the teachers and to the IEP team and said, I would like for you to help create some kinds of jobs within the school, and they did. So sometimes it's all about just asking that question, like what kinds of jobs are there available here, and what can my child do to gain some of those skills. So that's also something that you can work with your IEP team. So even if it's prior to working with Strive or prior to turning 18, there are jobs within every child's individual school, and it's having that conversation with staff and asking if they would partner with you in helping you to create those jobs and have your child participate in them with supports. So we have to move on. I apologize. Steve is another board member, and he's going to introduce Easter Seals.
Yeah, hi, Steve Blankenbeard. I have a daughter at the Mission Hill School. It's my pleasure to introduce our next speaker from Easter Seals. Lisa Sorois is their Director of Youth Leadership and Transition Services, and she's both a social worker and has a Doctorate of Education degree. So she's going to come up and talk about what Easter Seals does and about transition assessments more broadly as well. I hope.
Thank you. My biggest challenge was getting up here. I'm low tech, although Easter Seals does have high tech things. Okay, and I'm going to speak up. So when I was invited to represent Easter Seals here tonight, I admit it was a little daunting. One, because I was following BPS and wanted to make sure that I could add something meaningful to what I was going to be discussing tonight. Also being taped, I have to admit, is a little daunting, but I'm over that. So I was asked to present on transition assessments. And it's a very broad topic. And I wanted to make sure that what I presented would be pertinent and relevant and meaningful. So I did have a conversation with the chair to say, what do you think would be helpful to talk about? And one of the things that she mentioned was the role of the family. And I thought, well, that makes very good sense because the transition assessment and planning process is very much a family, community, and school process. So if nothing else, I hope that I drive home that point tonight, that the assessment involves everyone in this room, and it involves people that can tell and paint the best story about your child. So I'm going to raise a few specific points about transition assessment, just in terms of kind of those WH questions that Boston Public School talked about. And so much of what was shared tonight, I think, answers a lot of these questions in terms of the exploration process, the journey process is all part of the transition assessment. So a lot of what was discussed that Boston Public Schools are doing in the school building and outside of the school building inform the strengths and preferences and abilities of students and children that are transitioning on to young adulthood. The transition assessment tries to bring that information together and connect the dots. And that's why the expert in your child's life is the parent and guardian, to bring information to the table. So this process has to be very comprehensive and inclusive of that. So the areas that I'm going to touch on, and I'm going to try not to be redundant from what was said a little bit already, but when do we do the transition assessment? Why we do the transition assessment? What are we trying to assess when we perform the transition assessment? Who should be involved? And then what are the tools? Because that's the other piece that was raised as a concern to me, is how does a parent know if the right tools have been brought into the process to assess and measure this so-called transition process? And so I'm going to talk about that. And I'm going to talk about the fact that this is a very unique kind of process in that it is collaborative, as we heard already tonight, It's very unique and it's very individualized because each and every one of our children is unique and individualized in how they present and what they're going to be successful at doing after high school. And part of the process is deciding what services and supports do I need at home? What services and supports do I need at school? Is it a school job? What about the community? My son or daughter doesn't have quality downtime. He or she spends all of their time on the computer when they come home. They don't have friends outside of school. They're not comfortable socializing. How can I build in those kinds of things? Because life doesn't stop at 3. So it's, what do I need? And maybe it's not just all the school, but how can I get some help navigating that? So that's all part of this and why it is so collaborative. So it moves beyond just what we heard now, and it has to bring in all these other components. So when we do it, we do it at 14, we start at 14, but then we do it every year. And we do it every year because of what we just heard. Every year we see progress. Every year we may see a setback, and we may become frustrated. We have to determine, are we going the right way? How do we need to raise the bar some more? Okay, my son or daughter has done this, now how can we push it further? What do we need to continue to build on? So the process has to be annual. The 3-year piece goes away with the transition assessment. It becomes annual starting at 14, and it should drive an annual IEP. So that annual assessment is going to inform those annual goals to say, how are we raising the bar? Maybe the focus doesn't need to be on X, Y, and Z. If that's been mastered, what are we bringing in now? So that's why it has to keep going, and it has to be ongoing, and what we're doing during the year has to feed into how we go the next year. So we want to see that each and every year. The other reason that we do a transition assessment right at 14 is that we need a plan. We need a transition plan starting at 14. The transition plan is our roadmap. Without the transition plan, we don't know where we're going. We don't have a destination. We can't create a map there. We have to have a sense. And as we all know, at 14, 15, 16, 18, 19, 48, we may not know where we want to go. And certainly, a 14-year-old is not going to be able to tell you what their vision is. The assessment process is to try to figure it out knowing what we all know. And then to create a plan that helps us sort of map out this year and the years coming. So we need to start at 14 and we need to create that transition plan. And so that's the other reason we start then, because the transition plan needs to start then too. So those are kind of the main reasons for why we do it when we do it. We heard also that what we're assessing is very specific. It's interests, it's preferences. It's those natural aptitudes that we all know our sons and daughters have. They gravitate towards something. They stick with something all the time. There's one class they thrive in or they love or they never squirm out of their seats. Those are telling things, and those are what we're trying to assess. And we're assessing specifically for employment and training, for higher education or continued training and vocation, community involvement, because we realize that's an important cornerstone of transition. How is my son or daughter involved outside of school? That's very important because they're going to be outside of school, whether it's 18 or 22. And how can we build on that? And the other is independent living, which is not just my son or daughter is going to have their own apartment and be on their own. Independent living is all the things we know go into daily life. Can they get up on their own in the morning? How much prompting do they need to do something? How much reminding? Can they multitask? These are all things, they happen at home too. It's not just in the school building, and that's necessary to be successful after high school. Those things need to come into play with the transition assessment. So those are the things that we are also assessing for when we do this. We talked about a little bit who should be involved, and really we hear the word person-centered, we hear the word individualized, not one size fits all. That means that anybody should be involved in the transition planning and assessing your child's everyday needs and skills and abilities that can help paint that picture, that can help tell that story. So it could be if your child is involved in a faith program, it could be somebody at the faith-based program. It could be somebody who works with them there, a clergy or a member of the faith-based program. It could be a coach at a program that they participate in outside of school. Certainly teachers and staff at school. Certainly, all of you, as I've mentioned. But it really, related services, anybody that can tell that story should be brought in as a stakeholder in this process. And it's not just taking a test. That also makes the transition assessing process very unique. This is not the traditional take a test, standardize the measurement, and have a data point. This is about finding a way to give that youth a voice and telling their story. So if they have trouble communicating, it's using technology. It's finding an assistive technology device or low-tech means of allowing them to participate. It means observing in multiple different places and ways to try to gain information about how a student is functioning. So that just speaks to who should be involved in this process. And then what do we use? And I have a list of assessment tools that I will email to the board and chair people to get out to parents, just to start looking at them and seeing what different tools can be utilized in providing this assessment. But it's really very individualized based on the presentation and needs of the student. But just to go through a few of the different areas that we should be making sure are assessed. So college readiness, for example, if your child is going on to college, we talked a little bit about it. College readiness means how aware is your child about their disability? Do they understand that the accommodations are very different when you go to college? And trying to gather information about what they are aware of and what they understand are those things they can access when they go to college. Because we're trying to figure out the void or the gap between where they are now and where they want to go in terms of college readiness. Behavior. We want to see if behavior concerns are an issue within your family or for your child, that's going to have an effect in the workplace. That's going to have an effect in the community. It's going to have effect in their ability to make relationships and have friendships. Behavior needs to be assessed, and a tool needs to be utilized to do that. And again, we heard about learning styles. That's key in all of those settings as well, because if a supervisor is going to be providing instructions to your child in a job, how that information is provided is important. Is it written down? If technology is a tool that your son or daughter uses readily, can technology be used and be programmed to have reminders or to help a child multitask in the workplace? So learning styles is a tool that should be looked at. Career and employment interests. Again, it's very hard to just sit and ask a 14-year-old a list of jobs and would you be interested in these? Because oftentimes it's the assessment says they need more exposure. They don't know what they don't know. They think they want to be this, but when you talk about what a day in the life of that really looks like, it's not so great. So part of the process is saying what needs to happen to give more experiential learning to your son or daughter in order to move forward in the planning process. Daily living, financial planning, we need to have tools in our assessment that measure financial literacy. How much does your son or daughter know about money and exchanging money and saving money and budgeting money and using a bank account? Those are all assessment tools that are out there for transition planning. Communication and social skills and relationship building. Those are all important, obviously, for transition. If our son or daughter has trouble reading social cues, has trouble entering into conversations, has trouble, exiting or entering large groups or being in large group situations, that's going to help people to understand what are going to be the best environments for employment, for community involvement. These are all important as part of the assessment process. We talked about travel training and travel awareness. There should be a measurement tool in the assessment process that looks at that and speaks to that. And again, observations, one-on-one interviews, open-ended opportunities to sit and talk with people that know your child well is very much a part of this process. And then finally, it's pulling it all together. It's not just about, again, a standard score and a data point. It's how do we then connect the dots with all that we've collected to create that meaningful transition plan that's going to help map out something that's meaningful to the student. It's not just something that's set up to be delivered for all students, but it's individualized and tailored to meet the needs of your son or daughter that they're going to buy into and will help make their transition out of high school more seamless. So that completes my cards, and if there's any questions, I can certainly take them now, or you can share them later through email.
Your child, Easter Disability Services, who do you have to go through?
So we offer a lot of different programs for youth. You most likely would just contact the Youth Services Department. Actually, there's brochures for our Youth Leadership Network, the number on that and the email on that. We can be the gatekeeper for the assistive technology programs that we offer as well. Depending on what area you're looking for, we also have youth leadership programs that are sponsored by Mass Rehab that are youth groups around advocacy and leadership, which you have in the brochure. So joining those, we can help you connect with that as well.
Is this separate from the Boston Public School? Or is it
Yes.
all in?
We are separate from the Boston Public School. So we support all schools in Massachusetts.
Okay, so I did call them and got in contact with them. So you guys meet every rest of the month?
That's right.
Yeah.
We meet for the Boston Youth Leadership Network the first Saturday of every month
That's right.
from 1 to 3. Right at the downtown Boston office. It's free, sponsored by Mass Rehab, and it's a way for transition to get into the lives of youth before Mass Rehab can actually start working with them. So it's a great opportunity to build leadership skills, do some community, have some community experience.
Where is that?
So we are located at 89 South Street in Boston, 02111, because that's important, there's more than one South Street. It's right by South Station. Very accessible on the T, so good travel training in there too. And we're right on the first floor of the nonprofit building. And I did have some brochures for that.
If you look at the brochure,
Exhibit A.
it lists all the offices here and the Boston one's right down there.
Yeah, we have actually 4 network meetings going on across the state every month, but you would be the Boston office. So, any other questions? Well, thank you very much
Thank you,
for the
Lisa.
opportunity.
Thank you. So we have a number of more speakers, but one of the people that was listed was the Federation for Children with Special Needs. That person couldn't make it this evening. I was going to present her slides, but the information on those slides has already gone over by the other speakers. But we do have books from the Federation for Children with Special Needs in both English and in Spanish. I would encourage everyone to take one tonight because there's a lot of information that you're hearing. You need time to digest it. You want to go back and read it. We all take good notes, but it's good to go back and see it sort of in a cohesive manner. We also have resources already posted on our website, and we'll be adding them. One of the things that you want to recognize is that in the transition age group from 14 to 22, children also become adults, and that, I mean that legally. So you want to look at when they're 17 years of old, the transference of, you know, whether or not your child's gonna, you can do it at an IEP meeting, for them to sign over, you having the right to make decisions for them. They can sign it so you share decision making, or you may have to look at, depending on your child's level of need, whether or not you need to pursue guardianship, okay? At 18 years of old, 18 years of age, your child becomes a legal adult, and you no longer have decision-making ability for your child unless you've gone to court and gotten guardianship in a legal capacity. And you may say, well, my child doesn't need it, they're with me all the time, they're not really doing anything. But if your child is in an accident or injured and you go to the emergency room and you're not their legal guardian, you're now in a situation that you don't want to be in. It also comes down to their finances. It comes, you know, who's managing their finances? Are they able to sign checks? Could they be taken advantage of by someone, either in the community or, you know, online? That happens as well. You just want to secure that process and know that it's coming. It comes up very quickly, and just know at 18 years of age it happens. At the Brook Courthouse in downtown Boston, which is our family probate court for Boston, they offer an attorney who assists families for free with the guardian process. That's done once a week, I believe, at the Brook Courthouse. So you want to call there and find out about that process well in advance. All of the guardianship documents that you need to file in advance of your child turning 18, if that's something you want to pursue. And it doesn't have to be complete guardianship. It can be partial. You know, you can specify the types of decisions that your child cannot make independently and effectively for their own protection, whether it's medical issues, financial issues. All those forms are online if you just Google the probate court, and you can look up the guardianship, and you can call the helpline as well to get assistance with that. So the information on transition is well put together in this brochure. We also have on our website a brochure put together by the Developmental Disabilities Services, which is formerly DMR, is now DDS. And if your child turns 18 and is going to need services as an adult, you want to get that 688 referral process started when they're 18. And it's just letting them know that your child is coming. Services become eligible for services, and it's a benefit, not a right, once they turn 22, but you want to get them in the queue. You want them lined up for those services, so when they turn 22, you're not sitting at home saying, oh, well, school's now over, we have no place to go. You want to look at DDS, and you also want to look at Mass Health, whether your child needs community-based support services in terms of working out in the community or even doing a volunteership, or whether or not they need a day habilitation program, which is an adult program for adults with significant disabilities where they work on skills like communication, like social skills, like daily living skills. So things don't have to end. It's certainly not the same as special education, but again, it's something that you need to line up and know is coming. You know, when your child's turning 17 and 18, that's the whole issue of guardianship. And then 22 is whether or not they need adult services. Children with Mass Health generally automatically qualify for day help services. Whether or not your child has SSI is also something to look at with regard to the 688 referral process. But you know, we're covering a lot of ground here from the time that someone's 14 years old to the time that they're 22 or 18. So at a minimum it's 4 years, at a maximum it's 8 years, and there's a lot of information to digest, and things are going to change during that time frame. So I know you heard a lot tonight from Boston about what they have and what they're doing. It sounds like there's a lot of good programming going on. The question is it reaching your child? Has your child been given the appropriate assessments? Has that happened for your child? Is your child connected with transition and vocational services in their IEP? And if not, how do you get that process going? And how do you deal with that with the special ed office so that your child is not falling further behind in that process? So yes, there are services available. They're certainly not as expansive as we want them to be. I think that's one of the reasons the City Council is having a hearing to say this is an area that we need to dedicate resources to, and how do we bring support to this area. So this book is available in both English and Spanish this evening. You can also get it from the Federation for Children with Special Needs if you get one and you lose it or if we run out of copies. Again, we're going to have a number of resources both on guardianship as well as the DDS process on our website. You know, one of them is 48 pages long, so we didn't bring that. We figure everyone can access it. And I don't know about you, but I prefer to just save it and not print it out because then I lose half of it and I'm trying to figure it out. So if I just save it electronically, I can access it when I want it. So there's a lot of information. We're providing you with as much resources as possible. Put down your questions. If they're not answered tonight, we'll put answers up on the website and we'll go from there. But this is a building process in educating parents about transition and making sure that we're reaching all of our students in BPS who are 14 to 22. Currently, there are over 4,000 children in BPS who are ages 14 to 22 who are also on IEPs. So that's a lot of children that need these services. So I'm going to let the next speaker go.
Thank you, Carolyn. So our next speaker is Meg Stone. Meg is the Executive Director of a program called Impactability. Meg will talk in detail about what they do, but they really are teaching safety, self-defense skills, helping a child learn that self-advocacy. My daughter has been involved in the program, previously at the Harvard School, now at the Henderson School. And for me personally, I've actually seen the results of the program where she really is able to speak up for herself. So I know now that she's 18, when she eventually is out on her own, she will have those skills to recognize when she feels like she's not safe, but not only to recognize that, but to be able to advocate for herself, talk about it, and report it back to someone. So we'll let Meg talk more about the program.
Sure. I'm going to hand out some, this is going to be what I'm going over, and then, actually that would be awesome. There's several other handouts in there. Hi everyone. You tired yet?
A lot.
So far the speakers that have spoken have said a lot of really important, really key things about transition. And what our role in transition is at Impactability is making sure that people with disabilities have the skills to be safe when they're transitioning, to be able to recognize potentially unsafe situations, recognize potentially violent situations, and be able to do something to protect and advocate for themselves in a situation where they don't feel safe or somebody may be trying to take advantage of them. The Impactability program has been in the Boston Public Schools since 2011. We were started, the program itself started at Triangle, which is a disability service agency in Malden. And what we teach in the Boston Public Schools is hands-on, practical, personal safety skills. We have 2 instructors, one of whom actually plays the role of an attacker or a perpetrator or a person who may not be harmful but may be doing something that's inappropriate or not okay. And the other instructor helps them and coaches them and supports them through practicing self-protection skills. So in taking the Impactability class, students get the opportunity to practice self-protection and self-advocacy in a realistic situation, in a role play, in a pretend situation that feels to them like it's real, like it's similar to what they would face in the world. They learn to recognize potentially abusive situations, they learn to communicate assertively, and they learn to advocate for themselves under stress. So why do we even have this program? The main reason why we have this program is because, I'm just kicking the table here, because we know that people with disabilities are more likely to experience abuse and violence than people without disabilities. The other reason we have this program is because we know that people with disabilities have the skills and have the capacity to prevent violence against themselves, to protect and advocate for themselves in situations where they don't feel safe. We also know that teachers, parents, family members, and other providers have the skills and have the ability to recognize abuse and be able to proactively prevent abuse. So we know that sexual violence, violent crime, bullying, all different types of violence are more common in people with disabilities. People with disabilities are more likely to experience those types of violence. So we present students with the understanding of what they can do to stay safe. The situations that we present them with are refusing unwanted help, and they want to help you with whatever they want to help you with. And they may mean harm, and that might be their cover, or they may not mean harm, but as a self-advocate, as a person with a disability, you just don't want that help. So how do you respectfully and politely refuse that stranger's offer of help? Also, harassment and attempted violence committed by strangers, as well as inappropriate touch and sexual violence perpetrated by familiar people. Students learn to communicate their boundaries and their needs, and what is okay and what is not okay for them. Students learn to speak up and say no, and to protect themselves. As a last resort, students learn physical skills to stop somebody from harming them. So we are teaching a wide range of skills: awareness, communication, self-protection, so that when students are transitioning to adulthood, they are doing so with the tools to recognize unsafe situations and be able to advocate for and protect themselves in those situations. They're also learning the tools to report those situations to the safe adults in their lives, because we know that students play a big role in their safety, but safe adults in their lives play just as important a role. This program has been in several Boston public schools. It has been adapted to students with diverse disabilities. We have offered this program in the so-called MH or multiple disability programs at Charlestown High School, and we're able to match the safety skills, the number of repetition, the complexity of what we're teaching to the needs and the skill sets of the students. So we have not yet found a student that we couldn't teach. So how we teach. As I said before, it's a realistic scenario. There's an instructor who plays the part of a person they have to be careful of. And the acting is pretty convincing. The students seem to feel like it feels real to them. And they practice by doing. The way that you learn to ride a bicycle by getting on a bicycle. The way you learn how to swim by getting in the water. You learn to protect and advocate for yourself by actually doing it. We present scenarios in a way that students get to repeat the skills over and over again till they become automatic, till they become skills that the students have on them, that have accessible to them, even without as much prompting from the instructors. And we also place a strong emphasis every time a student does a self-protection or self-advocacy scenario, they report to an adult. Oftentimes in Boston classes, they'll report to their teacher, their occupational therapist, somebody from guidance. So they practice reporting, and they learn the skills, not that part of self-protection is reporting, and part of self-protection is engaging safe adults in their lives in helping them to stay safe. So I'm just going to talk about a couple of success stories that we've heard from students. We often hear back from teachers or Strive Community Connection facilitators that really see the program in action. And very early in the Impactability program, we heard about a student who was participating in an employment program, and her family moved. And the minute her family moved, she decided she was going to drop out of the employment program because she was scared of the commute. And she didn't know what she would do if somebody harassed her. Then she had about 4 Impactability classes. And she said, you know what? If somebody comes up to me and harasses me on the T end, I'm going to know what to do. So I'm not going to drop out of my employment program. And she didn't drop out of her employment program. And that's what, yes, some of our students use these skills in a worst case scenario, but that's the kind of success story we want to see. Because that's a student furthering her life. That's a student doing something positive in her life because she's not afraid of violence. We had another student who was a Madison Park student be approached and harassed and threatened by a stranger on public transit. He was able to take a strong position and yell, "Leave me alone," until the person left him alone. Person was probably presuming that this would be an easy victim, that this would be an easy target, but this student was able to use a strong voice and strong body language and be able to avert that threat. We had another student in an employment situation who experienced an incident of sexual harassment. She was able to recognize it right away, interrupt it, and report it to a supervisor. Because a big part of what we're doing in Impactability is we're educating students about what unsafe behavior looks like. What is abuse? What is harassment? What does it look like when someone's intentions are harmful, even if they're trying to conceal those intentions? So she was able to identify that that situation was harmful, and she had the tools to be able to do something about it and to report it. Another student was in a situation where he saw two of his peers starting to get into a fight. He was able to break up that fight and nobody was injured. So we have heard from many of the students that we've reached over the years that these safety skills that we're practicing in the classroom, that we're repeating over and over again, are accessible to them in situations where they need them. When they're faced with a scenario in real life, we've had travel trainers observe students be able to refuse unwanted attention on the T. So we know that people are using this in real life. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about how we got into Boston Public Schools, how we got to this place. My agency, Triangle, the umbrella agency that's over the impact and impactability programs, got a grant from the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation in 2011. So that year we started offering impactability classes to Malden and many other geographic areas, but we put a very strong emphasis on offering safety trainings to students in Boston Public Schools. To date, we have served or are currently serving 221 Boston Public School students, and we've also provided education and professional development about abuse to 214 teachers and paraprofessionals. And we've done, because of the grant funding, we've done this all at no cost to Boston Public Schools. The cost of the program has been paid entirely by the grant funding that we've gotten from Robert Wood Johnson. So how do we know that this program works? I mean, you see a success story here and there. That sounds good, but we wanted more than that. We wanted more than that. So we actually partnered with an organization called the Institute for Community Health to evaluate the program, to research and study the program as an outsider to make sure that it was doing what we thought it was doing. So the students that took the Impactability class in the 2012-2013 school year got the same program as all the other students we worked with, but we asked them to participate in surveys. We asked them to participate in surveys where they answered questions about their experiences of safety and their experiences of confidence, so we could see if the program was making a difference for them. We surveyed those students again a year later to see if any of the changes were maintained. Because, you know, we want to make sure that if students are getting something from the program, that whatever they're getting is going to stay with them for, you know, more than a few months. So 61 students took surveys, and we had retired special education teachers actually trained to administer the survey and administered the survey verbally by asking students a series of questions. And this made the survey accessible to students who don't gather information by reading and who don't communicate information by writing. So students with diverse disabilities were able to participate because the survey was administered verbally. There were 6 groups of students who participated in classes at 5 schools. I believe we had 2 at Madison Park. I'm not 100% sure. All 6 groups were surveyed before the class and after the class to see what changed for them over the course of the class. But 4 of those groups were surveyed when they weren't getting the class. You know, they were getting the class in January, but we surveyed them in September. And the reason why we did that is because we wanted to compare students that were getting impactability to students that weren't getting impactability. Because if all high school students improve their self-confidence because they're getting older and they're getting wiser, then that has nothing to do with impactability. So we wanted to be able to see how people who were getting the program were different from people who were on the waiting list to get the program and would get the program later in the year. Every student who took a survey got the impactability program. So what we found
is that compared to the students on the waiting list, the students who got the program in the spring as opposed to the winter, students' knowledge of safety, personal safety, and their knowledge of how to advocate for themselves increased. They were able to correctly identify what to do in certain situations, and they were able to retain that knowledge. We also found that their confidence in their ability to protect themselves improved. We didn't see that in the students on the waiting list, but we did see that in the students in the class. And finally, the students who took the class reported that they more frequently spoke up and said stop when somebody was doing something they didn't like. And given that we know that a lot of abuse is perpetrated by familiar people, unfortunately, and a lot of abusive behaviors start with people sort of pushing against students' boundaries and doing things that are mildly uncomfortable while they work up to more abusive acts, the fact that students could interrupt things that they found uncomfortable, and the fact that students could stop unwanted attention or touch, to us is very important. So even with a very, 61 people is a relatively small group to study, but even with that group, we were able to see some real differences. 1 year later, we found all of these students and said, remember that class you took a year ago? Well, we're going to give you another survey. And of the 61 students that we had surveyed initially, 49 of them were surveyed a year later, which is kind of incredible given how people move around in life. And we found, when we looked at the students, when the evaluators looked at the students, they found that they maintained their knowledge of safety and self-advocacy. So a year later, they could still tell you what they learned. Also, their confidence in their ability to protect themselves was maintained. Also, we found an increase in their self-advocacy skills and their self-advocacy knowledge. So we're, it's a challenge, not everything lined up perfectly. We didn't find that the program, changed the world and solved every problem, but we're really seeing some changes from the baseline to a year later, that the changes are being maintained, and we're seeing that students are developing this skill set which will serve them in many aspects of their transition. So this is the last year of the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation grant. We are currently doing classes at Brighton and Green Academy, and we will be doing classes at BCLA and Excel in the winter term. The spring term has not yet been determined. And what we are currently doing is we're working with Boston Public Schools, and we're working with other foundations to be able to identify funding to be able to continue the program. The program comes into schools for 10 weeks. The students get 90 minutes of hands-on instruction. We keep the classes small, 10 or 12 students, so that everyone gets hands-on practice and everyone gets the opportunity to try the schools. And we do a multi-session program so that students get the opportunity to repeat and practice so that the skills become common and rote for them. So this is our last year of the grant that launched the program. But we are working very hard to identify resources both within the school system and outside the school system to be able to continue bringing these programs to young people with disabilities.
Thank you.
Thank you, Meg. I just want to acknowledge Counselor Ayanna Presley is here, and if you'd like to come up and say a few words about the hearing. And then also Julia Landau is going to be next, presenting on the laws. So if we want to...
I really... good evening, everyone. It's good to see so many familiar faces. I don't plan on speaking long. This is one of the meetings that I most enjoy coming to actively listen because I always learn. And to that end, it was the first SpedPac meeting for the school year that I attended that served as the prompt for a hearing that I've been working on in partnership with SpedPac. So first and foremost, I don't want to be presumptuous, my name is Ayanna Presley. Since 2009, for those of you who vote and reside in the city of Boston, I've had the honor of serving as one of your 4 citywide city councilors. In broad strokes, my work has been about fighting on behalf of women and girls, breaking cycles of poverty, violence, and reducing trauma in our communities. I'm the founder and chair of the Committee on Healthy Women, Families, and Communities, and I'm really just trying to be intentional about building safe and healthy communities. And the chief way that we build a healthy community is to ensure that every individual, every family within that community is healthy and stable and strong. Otherwise, we can't have a thriving city. And so I participated, came to actively listen at the SpedPac meeting. I always learn so much here. And I just want to thank each and every one of you parents and guardians for being the advocates that you are for your children. You know, I am an elected official. Some people would say a politician. I'm not big on that word. I consider myself a public servant, but more than anything else, an advocate. And everything I learned about advocacy, I learned from my mother. May she rest in peace. I would not be here doing what it is that I do if she had not set such an incredible example in being such a fierce and unrelenting advocate for me. So I just want to commend and thank all of you for that. And I want to thank SpedPac for your vigilance. You make the community stronger, and for myself and my colleagues, you make us better because you challenge us. You should have in your packet that this hearing order that we're doing, it's a hearing to identify solutions to ensure equitable transitions of BPS youth receiving special education services. My office has been working with the leadership of SpedPac in preparation for this hearing. I want it to be robust, informative, and prescriptive. We don't want to just highlight where the gaps are in what is broken and what needs to be strengthened and improved, but we want to be able to offer real solutions and to hold the district accountable to see that those things are realized. So I'm just simply here as an ally, and again, I thank all of you for your advocacy. Is that okay?
Yeah,
Thank you.
I wasn't supposed to speak. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. My name is John St. Amon. I'm the Vice Chair of Boston SpedPac. A couple quick questions or points. If you haven't signed up for our email list, you can do it on our website. It's right there on any of the pages. It's right on the right hand side. Just fill it out, click it, you're done. Real quickly, there's a group amongst 3 colleges in Boston, Harvard, MIT, and Boston University. It's called the Friday Night Club, and it's designed for our kids to go. It's a Best Buddies program where they go and they partner up with a college student, and they'll have different activities and games, or and it rotates between the 3 schools every Friday night. So if this is something to consider, it'll be on our webpage, and I'll send the information out as well. It's called the Friday Night Club, and Allison is here from Harvard, and she has flyers as well outside and inside. So if you have questions, bring them up. But it's a great product and a great organization, and we look forward to making that a much more successful option for our kids to go to college campuses and have a wonderful experience. So thank you.
Thanks. All right, I know we're running a little bit late, and thank you everyone for your patience tonight. Next, I'd like to introduce Julia Landau. She's from Mass Advocates for Children. I personally have been working with Julia and Mass Advocates running transition workshops at the Boys and Girls Club in Dorchester, where I work myself. So she's here just to talk about the laws surrounding transition. So welcome, Julia.
Hi, long night. How many of you have kids who are 14 or older? That's everybody. How many of you have kids who are older, 18 or older? Great. And how many of you are not parents but are teachers or educators or work in BPS? Terrific. There's 10 minutes left, so I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about the law. I know that I'm not standing in the right position.
No, that's fine. It will be online.
Okay.
So your presentation will be there.
So I'm just going to give a very brief overview. Who does the slide?
I'll do.
You've heard everybody talk tonight about transition planning and services to prepare your kids so that they can succeed when they exit special education. When our federal and state lawmakers amended special education laws to really strengthen what you've heard about transition planning and services, because they were so worried when they looked at the employment rates of students with disabilities when they exit special ed, when they looked at whether students were able to succeed in college, whether or not they were able to live independently. So that's why lawmakers put in all these protections, and that's why the school department is trying to respond so robustly to really make sure that when your kids exit, they can succeed. So what are the kinds of things that you hope for your kids when you think of them when they leave, whether they're 18 or 22? Or what are the kinds of things you're worried about when they leave?
Failure.
Failure. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Failure.
Just not to get a job,
Not to get a job.
drive, stay at home, do nothing.
Not drive. I'm just repeating because not everybody can hear. Stay at home. Being independent.
With safely living alone by themselves.
Being safe, living alone by themselves.
I think because they have special needs, they want, when they go into the workforce or after school, they just want to be socially accepted. We're among the special needs people, are among the regular people, so it's hard to fit in. They try everything they can to try to fit in.
So they're worried about being socially accepted and fitting in.
Yeah.
Part of the community. Part of the community.
And the friendships or someone to be with them and guide them.
Friendships. How many are you concerned about your kids having friends and having community when they're adults and as they get older? Those are really valid, important concerns that are shared by parents throughout the city, throughout the state. And so what you're hearing about today and what the law talks about is, the law specifically is talking about what you're worried about and what you're concerned about and what your hopes are for your kids. But the thing is that what I know, and I'm sure Eileen Nash from Boston would recognize, and I know the PAC recognizes, is what's in the law and what you're hearing about sounds really good, but it is hard to make it really happen for your kids, right?
Yes.
Really hard. But the law is strong, it's an amazing tool, you can partner with the school district, but I wish as a lawyer I could say it is just gonna happen automatically. But I'm not telling you anything that you don't know, right? That it doesn't always happen automatically. So I'm gonna briefly go through what the steps are. I know the PAC can provide, I keep walking around, which is gonna drive you crazy,
Yep.
sorry. So to go to the next slide, you've heard that all students with disabilities with special needs 14 to 22 are eligible for these robust kinds of services and plannings to help make sure they've got the skills so they won't fail. So they will have friends, so they will have community. And that's the 800 students who are on the non-diploma track that are getting the services from Strive. Remember when Jack was talking about that? But it's the thousands of other students who are still hoping to get a diploma and exit closer to 18. All your kids are supposed to be getting the services. And you heard a lot of people talk about this, right? That the transition services are not supposed to be one size fits all. Somebody out here was saying, you know, my child is not a child who's going to want to necessarily be interested in recycling or copying. Was there somebody who said that? So again, the law is really clear, and you heard folks talk about how there's a process in place, if you participate and advocate, and your kids do, to make sure that what's offered is based on your particular child's interests, your particular child's strengths, and their goals. Now Boston's this big school department. It's hard to make that happen, but we know it is possible. Thanks. So what to do? Probably the most, I'm going to give 5 steps. I wish I could say there are 5 easy steps. They're 5 on paper. They're not always, they're easy on paper. They're not easy in practice. Step 1, you've heard about the transition assessment. How many people here know whether or not your kids have had transition assessments? And how many of you kids have had transition assessments already? Very few. The parents that call our office that we help, that's what we're seeing as well. We do not see a lot of kids who are getting these assessments starting at age 14 the way they're supposed to. So our number one suggestion, if your child hasn't had a transition assessment, request it. Request it in writing. Keep a copy of your request for the transition assessment, and then you heard the woman from Easter Seals and others talk. I'm sure the PAC can support you in making sure that the testing they do will really help figure out what your child's interests and strengths are. I mean, these laws are as good as the paper they're written on until you as parents and the school department together really breathe life into them and make the promise a reality. That's step one. And the assessment is really important because that's what's going to help make sure that your child gets the services that are really going to meet their needs. You heard the woman talking about what they're doing in the middle school to help make sure that your kids can really participate in the team meetings. Participating in team meetings is hard for parents, right? To really have a voice, to feel like you're a real partner. It's really hard to make this part of the law real, but what the woman was talking about that they're piloting now is something that you can ask for in the IEP meeting. If you feel like it's important for your child to learn to self-advocate and participate, those are things that you can have written into the IEP. I have about 3 minutes.
No, you can go over.
Okay, step 3. You heard, this is really kind of a quick review of what's in the law. What you heard talk about is that there's a form called the Transition Planning Form. Are folks familiar with that? Have you used it at your IEP meeting? So this is really a form that helps begin to focus on what are your child's goals, what kind of services will they need so that they don't fail, so that they're going to learn how to have friends, so that if they take meds, they can learn how to manage their own meds and their own medical needs, so they'll be successful on the job. Those things are supposed to go into the form, but then what's in the form has to go into your child's IEP. And that's something that we don't see happen all the time. The form is for planning, but then your team with your voice and your kid's voice is supposed to figure out what services do your kids need. If you want to make sure that your child doesn't fail on the job, what kind of experiences do they need now? Do they need a job coach? Maybe their classroom is all going to an ice skating rink for some pre-vocational training. But like the woman over there said, that's not the kind of job that taps into your child's interests and skills. So getting it written in the IEP is not always easy, but it's what the school department is trying to change the system so this all happens more smoothly. You said it's testing, your child participating. What was the third thing I just talked about?
Transition planning form and get it into the IEP.
I knew you knew. So the fourth thing is, step 4, is the goals. Now a lot of times when you think about the goals in IEP, a lot of people think that's not that important of a part of the IEP. Your IEP is a lot of paper, right? It doesn't always seem like it's going to make a huge difference in what happens to help your kids prepare to succeed. But if you work with the team to make sure that the goals reflect your main concerns and your child's main concerns and goals, then you are able to make the argument for why they need the services that you think will really make a difference. And then the last step is to list the specific services in the IEP. You've got the sense that what's promised in the law is really broad, but it's going to take your voice in the IEP meeting with your kids to make that promise a reality. The last point is graduation. One thing that not everybody knows is your kids have a right to keep getting services from the Boston Public School Department until they graduate or until they're 22, whichever comes first. There are some students, a small number of students, who might pass MCAS, but because they still have such significant functional needs in terms of learning the skills they need to take care of themselves, to know socially how to interact with somebody in a job so that they're keeping the right space from somebody. So, what? Exactly.
Impactability. Self-advocacy, good job.
So if the school department is proposing to graduate your child and you believe, and the outside folks who may be working with your child believe that your child still has very significant functional needs and still requires special ed services, you're allowed to say that you think your child needs more time in special education, and there's a way that you can reject their proposal to graduate your child if you think it's premature. So what you basically want to do is make sure that if you feel like your child is ready to graduate, that they're able to graduate and move on, and if you feel like they need need ongoing services, the IEP team is supposed to talk about that. Does that make sense? It's kind of confusing, huh?
Yeah, I think an example, if you don't mind, Julia, is just that like some of the kids that have autism and they're higher functioning academically, so they're doing great in their classes and they're passing the tests and they're passing the MCAS, but socially they can't navigate the world. They're not organized. They can't, pull it together. So if you sent them off to college, they're not going to be able to navigate the campus. They're not going to be able to make friends. They're lacking those skills. So they're still unprepared in terms of, moving on to the next step. And if you cast them into the adult world where those services don't exist, like they do in special education, you want to pause and say, we may not be ready to go to that next step. We're going to need some extra support.
So Diane and Carolyn, do you want to leave it open to questions, or do you want us to just wrap it up now? Because really, the main point to walk away with is there's a tremendous amount of support here from the school department, from the PAC. You have a political leader here who's so concerned about this issue. It's amazing so many parents are here tonight, and the tools are really there for you to make sure that your kids have friends and are really to succeed in the community when they leave. So. I'm going to go into more detail now. Do you want questions now, or just let people go?
No, they can ask questions.
Yeah. Does anyone have a question?
I had a question. We sort of slipped through the cracks, like from 1st to 8th grade. We didn't have a psych eval and cognitive, and now our whole labeling got changed right into high school, where now we have to make all these changes. We went to visit the Henderson, but my question is, now that my child's gotten comfortable with her peers, because she was at one school for a long time, now she's at a new school for last year and this coming year. Like, I'd like to see her walk the stage, but she'd never taken the MCAS, and now she's supposed to take it. Because I want to see it, try it. So my concern is that I'm making the right decision around, I know she's going to need a little bit more, like you were saying.
Well, one of the things, those are really hard decisions, I think, for every family to make, for parents to help guide their children to make what the best decision is. The special ed law does give you the right to get a second opinion, to get outside testing from, and I don't know if you already have that.
I'm kind of in the process of that just now.
So many of the parents that call our office say, I'm concerned, I don't think my child's making the progress that they should, I'm not sure what decision to make. So it's not like, most parents don't happen to be educational experts as well, but you know your kids. So really, a lot of times, the most important thing is to get that outside testing to help you figure out, so with that concern, what is the best next step? And I know the PAC can help you with names of who to go to for that testing. My office can as well. That's second opinion can often, I think, really be helpful. Do you find that as well? Other questions? It's a lot of information.
Thank you, Julie.
Very well,
It is a lot of information, and like I said, take home the information that we gave you, visit our website, look at the information that's available on there. If you have questions or concerns, we have issue forms that are on the website itself. If you have questions or concerns, you can also email us and we'll get back to you. If there's a specific issue regarding transition, currently with your child, you can fill out one of those issue forms. We will give it to BPS and facilitate getting you a resolution for that. But I think that knowing what your rights are and knowing about transition and being prepared for it, or if you're not already prepared, becoming prepared quickly if your child's already in that age bracket, and reaching out to us as resources and also the resources that we gave you this evening, because this really is an important aspect of your child's life, to really maximize what you can in these last years of special education to prepare them for adulthood. Okay? Thank you.
Oh, wait, before we leave, Jeff from Epic.
Oh, I'm
it's
sorry. Sorry.
Jeff, did you want to come and speak briefly?
Yep.
We'll talk about a program it's an inclusive program that they offer, volunteer program. And then Jay O'Brien is going to talk about Exceptional Lives.
I'll be very brief.
Okay, so two more things,
These
sorry.
were up front, but if you didn't get one, I'll be passing them around. They're from Jeff. They're from Epic.
So we offer at Epic, we do leadership development and community service programs for youth with disabilities. We have a couple different programs that are all in these packets, but I'm going to specifically talk to you about our Service Warrior program. It is a one-year program for youth between the ages of 16 and 23 with any type of disability, engaging them in community service around the city of Boston. So many of the concerns that you have all raised around employment and being engaged in the community and making friends, we know, studies show, service is a way to change those outcomes. People who engage in service are 27% more likely to get a job, right? It increases self-esteem. And for youth with disabilities, it flips the script. Youth with disabilities are used to being served, and everyone's used to serving them. We're changing that. So nothing feels better to our youth when they come in and they're like, oh no, I can help you. And it changes how the community sees young people. So the way our program works is it runs from April to April. Our young leaders meet at least once a month and do a community service project. Those projects are big and small. They happen all around the city, from cleaning up parks in some communities to painting murals to 2 weeks ago, our team of young leaders led 160 community volunteers to repaint the inside of the Haley pilot. So these are big projects. In addition to doing the community service, our youth meet 1 to 2 extra times a month and do leadership development days. So we go to Boston City Hall and meet with local politicians, where they get the opportunity to talk to these politicians about what are you doing for us as young people with disabilities. They go to voter registration. Everyone over the age of 18 in our program becomes a registered voter. And since that point, we know that all of our young leaders have voted. Our youth do financial literacy training. We work with Impact and do safety and self-advocacy training. So we cover a wide variety of leadership and independent living skill topics with them. And by the end of the year, we see drastic outcomes for them. We talked about young people needing to know that they have a disability. We have young people who walk in and we ask them in their interview about their disability, they just say, I'm special. A year later, they stand up at graduation and proudly talk about how they're a person with autism. We see that 90% of our current and past service warriors who are post-secondary school are either enrolled in college or are employed. And once young people are part of our program, they can stay part of our program. So they can't come back year after year and do service warriors, but they can come back to our youth nights. They can do internships through us. They can become trainers in our program and travel around with us and teach trainings on inclusion. So there's a wide array of opportunities once they're in our program. It is a competitive program, so in these packets is an application. They are due by February 2nd. Young people need to do the application, get a reference, and then come in and do interviews with EPIC staff. So from day one, they're learning skills for employment by going through this process. We're out of time.
I'm sorry.
I'm going to stop there. No, you're good. But I'm going to stick around, so if you have questions afterwards, feel free to come talk to me.
Thank you. What a great
Thank you. Sounds great. Thank you.
One more, Jay O'Brien, an online tool, Exceptional Lives.
Yes, thank you, and thank you parents for making the time to come out here. My name is Jay O'Brien. I am co-founder and director of a new nonprofit called Exceptional Lives. Our team is working to change the way you get the customized info you need to navigate some of these very complex and overwhelming processes and systems. Now, I'm not a parent myself. but I'm working with 2 parents of teens with different types of disability. We have funded and developed this new online navigation tool that walks you, as the parent, step by step through these very difficult processes that you have no prior knowledge of in many cases. For example, the transition to adulthood. Now, what you're being handed now is the first version of our tool, which is about safety planning, which is also important for transition-aged young adults. However, we are right now working on a transition to adulthood version of this tool, and I'll show you some screenshots. It'll take me about 90 seconds. Let me just ask a quick question. How many folks here, not everybody uses the internet, but how many folks here sometimes, all right, not all, but many. And so we have a tool for you. Even if you don't use the internet, maybe a loved one who does can help you achieve the benefits of this type of step-by-step walkthrough tool. So soon you will be able to access these through our website, which is exceptionallives.org. I believe that is on the sheet, or at least it's attached to my email address. And let me just, here we go. All right, so you would land here at the intro screen, and basically this is a different way to take the info and the knowledge and the expertise that are in books like this, which happens to be a Down syndrome transition handbook, which is actually quite heavy, but also the websites, the directories, the databases, the experts, who are speaking here tonight, their PowerPoints. We're trying to take all of that expertise from the people who know how to navigate these systems and give it to you and make it freely accessible, free of charge, through the internet. So whenever you have time to navigate it, you can walk through some of these steps. Now, this happens to be safety planning. And what's on those sheets is a way for you to go from your own home computer or even a public computer at the library and just simply walk through some of these steps. We ask you questions along the way. Each answer you give customizes the info that you get, and then we filter out what's not relevant to you. So we had an age group question. I think this right now is the 0 to 13 path. We have a young adult path and an adult path, and this is, again, just for families preparing for a potential crisis or emergency. In the transition to adulthood, we're going to adopt the same approach. We're going to ask you questions. Every answer you give is going to customize the info that you get as you walk through from start to finish. We encourage you along the way. We give you progress bars to show you how far you've gone and how much further you have to go. And I'm going to go towards the end some fillable forms that you can fill right online and print or email to other members of your child's caregiving team. And when you get to the end, we throw an electronic party for you in that final screen. So we actually, if you wish, we send you a certificate of completion, which someday are going to be very, very valuable. Right now, they aren't worth a thing, but we hope in the big picture that this is a new tool for you to get access to all of the great things that you heard tonight and all the many forms that they come in, but in a way that you can digest and act upon more effectively.
Great.
And we're having workshops, so we maybe I can talk to the Boston SpedPac folks about a workshop after the first of the year, after the holidays.
We'll have more. Thank you, Joe. Do you want to ask questions?
Does anyone have any questions before we end for this evening? I know it's been a lot of information to digest. Hopefully you've gotten it in many different formats. It's available on our website. You've heard about some additional programs and additional resources. If there's no questions tonight, you know where to find us, bostonspedpac.org. Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving.